Keith and Jessica.
Okay, I think the meeting is starting up. Starting to get attendees coming in.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I think so.
Good evening and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the West Wash Dam Rehabilitation Project. We will start this meeting with introductions, begin with the City of Reno. My name is Steve Gamillis, and I am a project coordinator with the Utility Service Department. Also having some issues right now trying to log in is Carrie Lanza, engineering manager with the Utility Services Department. She will be joining us shortly. And next, I would like introductions from NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Callahan. I am the team lead for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We are part of the federal USDA. We are funding this project and then also, or helping fund this project, and also doing project oversight for both policy and federal regulation. This project is funded for dam rehabilitation to bring the dam up to current safety standards. I have a team that also works for me, but we will not be introducing them today on this call.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. So I'll take it from here, Steve.
Yes, go ahead, Keith.
Okay. My name is Keith Karpstein. I'm with Far West Engineering. I'm a senior engineer that will be managing this project and just assisting my team as needed throughout this whole process. So we're going to go through and a few of our team members are going to introduce themselves and their roles on the project. So we'll get started with Jessica.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Dugan. I'm a regulatory and environmental specialist at Far West Engineering, and I'm helping NRCS and the City of Reno work through the NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act. And that's the short of it, I think. Greg?
Sure. So I'm Greg. I work on the quality side. I'm with the Far West team and I'm an engineer here, and I appreciate it. I've done a lot of projects with the City of Reno, and we're looking forward to this one. Alex?
Yeah, my name is Alex Stodmeister. I'm also with Far West. I'm a civil engineer. I've been leading our efforts for the hydraulic and hydrology analysis along with Chelsea Clough. And so we've been doing a lot of the math behind everything. So Michael.
Good evening. My name is Michael Anderson. I also work for Far West, and I've been involved in dams and dam safety for approximately 25 years as a civil engineer. And at this point in time, I'm assisting with the selection and development of the alternatives.
That leaves Chelsea.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Clough. I also work at Far West Engineering, and I've been doing a lot of the analysis with Alex Stodmeister.
Thank you, Chelsea. So that's the Far West team. We've got a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to run through tonight. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. Let's see. Okay, I hope everybody can see my screen. Can the team see it? Okay. Well, thank you folks for joining us tonight. As we said, we're here for the presentation. It's a public scoping meeting for the supplemental watershed plan. Yes, sir.
It says you're sharing, but we still have a black screen here. It could just be loading, but
Okay.
maybe try one more time to make sure the public gets to see all the visuals.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Greg. What about now?
Now we're talking.
All right, good. All right, sorry about that, everyone. So anyways, we'll get back to the presentation. We're here for the public scoping meeting for the supplemental watershed plan and environmental document for the Peavine Mountain Watershed and West Wash Dam Rehabilitation Project. So we're going to go through the presentation, and at the end of the presentation, we're going to do a Q&A section. So you'll be able to ask questions, and then myself or the project team will do our best to respond to those. Okay. All right. So as stated previously, when Steve introduced his team, the owner of the project is the City of Reno. The lead federal agency is the USDA. Michael introduced himself. And then Far West is the engineer on the project. So tonight's meeting objectives. The purpose of our meeting tonight is to inform the public about the planning effort that's underway for the Peavine Mountain Watershed West Wash Dam Rehabilitation Project. So this meeting is being held just to identify and scope issues to be considered during development of the supplemental watershed plan and the environmental document for the dam rehabilitation project. So essentially what that means is this is a pre-decision meeting. We have not made a decision on what the project involves, although we are going to present some alternatives that are being considered as part of this process. So real quick, I'm going to have Jessica just kind of run through the process of NEPA, so you all get an understanding of where we're at and where we're going to head from here.
Thanks, Keith. So just an overview of the NEPA process. Because NRCS is funding part of this project, that constitutes a major federal action under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. NEPA requires certain public participation throughout the planning process and requires the evaluation of environmental and social impacts of the proposed projects. So this graphic shows where we are at the beginning of this process here. We are here scoping together. So this meeting really is to make sure that any concerns the public has related to the proposed project at the West Wash Dam are identified and included in the planning process. There will be other opportunities for public participation and comment. So this is just the first. After tonight's meeting, the public comment period will be open for 60 days. So this presentation and some other information will be available on the project website for you to review. The 60 days is a little bit longer than usual, and that's due to COVID-related restrictions and concerns surrounding public meetings that we can't all be together, and gives people a little extra time to be able to find the information and review it electronically. So your written comments can be submitted to the City of Reno, to Steve, and all comments will be cataloged and categorized, and responses to questions will be included in the draft environmental document. So you can see that's a couple of steps later down the slide where we publish the draft environmental document. So we will identify, the next stages will be identifying project alternatives and reviewing the environmental reports that identify biological, aquatic, and cultural resources in the project area, just to name a few. So those environmental resources, along with socioeconomic and environmental justice impacts, will be assessed for each of the project alternatives. A complete draft environmental document will be prepared. So the public will be notified when the document is ready, and comments will be solicited again. So there'll be another public meeting like this one at that time. Hopefully that will be in person, but we don't know at this point. You will see the same types of notices going out. And then the final step in the NEPA process will be a final environmental document and a decision on the impacts of the project that will be issued by NRCS. And that is approximately a year from now. So this will be ongoing. And our goal really on behalf of the city of Reno and NRCS is to end up with a great project that the public is in support of, and that improves public safety related to West Wash Dam, and that also meets the programmatic objectives of NRCS. So that's really the goal here. And we look forward to your comments and questions to make this a great project. And now I'll just turn it back over to Keith for some background information about the dam.
All right, great job. Thank you, Jessica. All right, so just a real quick background on the project. So the West Wash Dam, which is in the Peavine Mountain Watershed in Washoe County, it was or is included in the United States Department of Agricultural Natural Resources Conservation Service, also known as USDA NRCS. It's and they're funding the rehabilitation project in partnership with the city of Reno. And as I mentioned previously, the city of Reno is the owner and the sponsoring local organization. So the project background, so the West Wash Dam was originally constructed in 1960 with the East Wash Dam following in 1961 under the direction and authority of the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Act, which was Public Law 83-566. So the original watershed plan for these dams had an evaluated life of 50 years. We're now right about 60 years. So that's the primary reason why we're pursuing this project. And, you know, originally when these dams were constructed, the purpose was flood protection of downstream properties. So our goal, as Jessica mentioned, is to maintain protection of life and property downstream of the dam. So here's a quick overview of the project location outlined in red. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the location. The East Wash, I don't know if you folks can see my cursor, but the West Wash is here. And then the East Wash Diversion Dam sits up in here. And here's a quick look at the upstream watershed basins that drain into both the East Wash and the West Wash. So here, the outline in blue and then purple here, that is the East Wash drainage that goes into the East Wash Diversion Dam down in this location. And the outline in pink would be the West Wash drainage that discharges directly into the West Wash basin. So we do have a quick project flyover so you can get a little bit more familiar with the site. And at this point, Michael, if you wanted to chime in and add any other details that I may have left out, that would be great.
Sure. Flood flows generally north to south, crossing North McCarran Boulevard and entering the system. East Wash Detention Dam collects all the flow from East Wash, releasing it at a reduced rate into the existing stormwater system through the primary spillway. Larger floods are held in the impoundment area, while extreme floods are discharged through the auxiliary spillway to West Wash. West Wash Dam collects all flow in West Wash and any discharge from the East Wash Dam's auxiliary spillway, where again, water is released at a reduced rate to the existing stormwater system via the primary spillway, with larger floods being held in the impoundment and extreme events discharged through the auxiliary spillway to the right of the dam.
Perfect. Thank you for that detailed description, Michael. Okay. So why are we here? This is a 50-year reevaluation to meet current NRCS, City of Reno, and State of Nevada Division of Water Resources dam safety criteria and performance standards. And we also want to, like I mentioned previously, we want to maintain public safety and protection of property from flooding downstream of both of those dams. So currently, we do have some previously identified possible deficiencies, one being vegetation growth on the dam structures that may compromise the structural integrity of those structures. There is erosion that's been observed, as well as upstream development. So since the time these dams were constructed, there has been significant development upstream of the dams. So the conditions upstream have changed, which impact the flows coming into the dams. There's also been changes in the design methodology that has taken place over the past 60 years. So we have, and we're continuing to reevaluate the design of these dams to ensure that they're all up to current standards. And also there's been changes in climate patterns over the past 60 years that have been identified and are now recognized and incorporated into the design methodology. All right, so we do have, as I mentioned before, we do have a list of preliminary alternatives. Now, the first alternative is the no action alternative. So this would leave the dams as is, no improvements. It's also called the future without project. And this alternative is required to be considered by NRCS under NEPA. Now, the second alternative is flood proofing. So what this does is it increases the storm drain infrastructure capacity downstream of the dams. And it also creates a floodway, and there's many ways to do that. It could involve purchasing property and converting it to a floodway or open space. And this alternative is also required to be considered by NRCS under NEPA. Now, the third alternative, this would remediate both dams, or what we've been referring to, rehabilitate both dams. So it would reestablish the crest elevation of the principal spillways. There would be improvements to the auxiliary spillway, and those are related to the east wash. Now on the west wash, it would require that the dam embankment be raised, and also that the auxiliary spillway be improved to its original conditions with some modifications based on current design standards. Now, alternative 4, this would include the removal of both dams. And with that, the area would be returned to its natural drainage landscape. And this alternative is also required to be considered under NEPA by NRCS. And then the fifth alternative that's being considered is the removal of both dams with flood proofing downstream. So in a sense, this would be a combination of alternative 2 and alternative 4 with some slight variations to the requirements for the flood proofing. So we do have some exhibits that may better explain the text that I just read through. So preliminary alternative 1, this is the no action alternative. Right now, some of our preliminary analysis have recognized that during the 100-year storm event, which is also known as the 1% chance of exceedance in any given year. So it's based on historic data. There's a 1% chance that the 100-year event may occur every single year. So that's a little quick background on terminology for this. But what we've recognized is during the 100-year event, there is overtopping of this west embankment here. So that would continue to happen if we do no improvements. And then with the West Wash Dam, we have recognized that there would be overtopping of the dam during the 3-quarter local PMP event. And what the PMP stands for, that's the probable maximum precipitation that is specific to this location. So essentially what that's saying is that's the biggest flood this area would ever see. So there would be overtopping during that event. And then the existing spillway, which is here on the west side of the dam, that would be activated during the 200-year event, or also known as the 0.5% chance of exceedance in any given year. And preliminary alternative number 2, this would be the flood proofing of downstream. So essentially, you know, on that previous slide, I talked about the overtopping and the spillway flows going through. This alternative would accommodate those flows from the dam site all the way down to the Truckee River. So here's kind of a general layout of the paths of those flows shown in blue from the site all the way down. So this flood proofing would take place on approximately, 2.2 miles from the site all the way down to the Truckee River. Preliminary alternative number 3, this would remediate both dams. Now, the current plan for this alternative would be to increase the capacity of the East Wash by excavating material out of here and reseeding that with native vegetation. We'd restore this west embankment to the as-built or original elevation and armor it against erosion. And we'd also armor, or essentially what you've seen is riprap, or there's other methods for this, which we don't have any details, but we would armor this against erosion and make slight improvements to this spillway. And then for the West Wash, essentially here, we would raise the dam by placing material on the face of the dam and bringing it up in elevation. We don't know the exact raise that would be required. We're still working on those studies, but that would be part of this alternative. And we'd also restore and armor this auxiliary spillway, which you can see here on the west side of the dam. We have identified to assist with raising this dam that we would potentially borrow material out of this area, and again, reseed that with native seed mix. But that's, hasn't been decided, but we are considering that with this alternative. And then preliminary alternative number 4 would be the removal of both dams. So all structures, embankments that are shown here in gray, those would be removed, and we would try to reestablish these areas to their natural drainage and vegetation. And here for the West Wash, you can see the same thing with the gray area. That would be removed, and we'd regrade and revegetate that to original conditions. And we'd also have to do some removals and regrading and reestablishment of this area here, which is the spillway going out. And then lastly, our preliminary alternative number 5 would be the removal of both dams, which I just explained, and then the flood proofing downstream. And in this scenario, with the dams removed, we do have now, in addition to the West Wash improvement, we'd have to improve the flood conveyance along this red line from the East Wash to its convergence with the West Wash drainage. So that's a quick overview of the alternatives. Again, I'm sure there's questions out there on, maybe clarifications that we need to run through. And if you hold tight, we'll get through the presentation and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. So the project schedule, here's a just a quick summary of the schedule. And Jessica already went through the process, and here are some anticipated dates for the schedule. So as she mentioned, public comment will be open for 2 months, ending on December 19th. We anticipate to have the draft environmental document available for review in July of next year. And then we'll have, again, another public comment period with a presentation that'll take place from July to September of next year. And then we'll publish the final environmental document in October of next year. And this document, when it is published, that'll be available to the public for review. And I believe the public will have an opportunity for additional comment. Is that correct, Jessica?
Mostly comments will be accepted during the draft review period over the summer. Once we get to the final document, comments can be submitted, but they aren't necessarily incorporated into the document at that point. So if people want to get comments in, they should try to do that at the draft document period.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification. So, and then we anticipate a record of decision or a FONSI, which is a finding of no significant impact, issued for or issued by NRCS. And we expect to have that complete in November of 2022. And when that happens, that will be noticed to the public. So there will be notifications going out that that has been done. And then after that, with the selected alternative, we will start the project design, which is expected to take place from 2023 to 2024, with construction beginning in 2025. Now with that, here's the contact information for Steve. He'll be accepting comments via email, phone, even written comments by mail. So you can reach out to Steve, and we will post this presentation on the project website where his information is already there. But here's just, here it is again. So with my project team, City of Reno, NRCS, is there anything we'd like to add?
I'd just like to add quickly, Keith, if you have specific requests, the public has specific requests or questions, or if you would like to receive notification of the availability of the draft environmental document, make sure that you do contact Steve. Anyone that submits comments will receive notice of the document in addition to all the public notice efforts.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica.
This is Mike Callahan. The only thing I would add is also during that draft comment period, the plan and environmental document will also be reviewed by permitting agencies for them to also provide comment at that time.
Perfect. And Michael, can I add that the we do have one cooperating agency for the project? Would that be appropriate?
Sorry, you broke up there for a second, Keith.
Oh, I just wanted to note that we do have one cooperating agency, correct? And that's the US EPA that'll be involved throughout the development of this document.
Yes, the EPA has agreed to an informal agreement to be assisting on reviews during the planning process as a cooperating agency.
Perfect. Okay.
Hey, Keith, I might just speak towards, you know, we're so early in the game. This is really just a project introduction, but I think it'd be good to acknowledge, you know, the purpose of the process is to find the most practical solution. And we want to acknowledge that some of the alternatives are required to be looked at by law, but doesn't always mean that they're practical. So we'll be going through this process, finding the practical solution. It's not that they're all good ideas.
Yeah. So to add to that, with these 5 alternatives that I previously presented, each of those are going to go through a detailed alternatives analysis. So we're going to look at impacts to the environment, which would include biological resources, cultural resources, aquatic resources, social impacts, economic impacts. So we're looking at everything for each of these alternatives when we move on from here. But yeah, ultimately the goal is to come up with a project that continues to provide protection of life and safety downstream of these dams. Okay, well, I guess we're ready for Q&A. So I'll stop sharing the screen. Do we have anybody with their hands raised?
Hey, Keith.
Yes.
We have 2 questions that came in on the chat that I'm happy to answer right now. The first question is from L. Hill, who asked, are you using historic data or forward-looking climate change forecasting? Design standards set for NRCS dams require us to use federally selected data. Now that data comes from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, and we use the NOAA Atlas 14. Now for the semi-arid West, which is what we're considered over here, we use volume 1. The last revision of volume 1 is from 2011. So while it is historic data, it does take into some consideration climate change up to a certain point. However, when you look at forward data, climate change predicted data, it's very general in terms of how it looks at different areas, how it looks across the United States. And because we sit in the rain shadow of the Sierras, Reno can be very, very strange with its precipitation at times, as we all know. So using the climate change forecasted data isn't used for 2 reasons. 1, it's difficult to predict for our area. And 2, we are mandated to use the NOAA Atlas 14 data per the NRCS design standards.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex, for the clarification. The next part of L. Hill's question is, what pesticides and herbicides are used to clear plants in the area, and what public notice is given? So Steve, I don't know if you are able to answer that at this time.
So the last, I believe, 2.5 or 3.5 years, we've been using weed whackers and removing the vegetation. There was big efforts done one year where we took away, there were some burnt trees and branches and hauled away with a dump truck. What's being used, and I'm not sure when's the last time it was used, was vegetation herbicide, but I'll find out for sure from our maintenance department. They have it posted on our website, but the West Wash Dam has been using weed whackers as of late and removing the vegetation, cutting it low, not removing the weeds completely, but cutting the sagebrush real low so there's not deep roots, but keeps them from low and not actually getting deep roots into the dam.
Excellent, thank you, Steve. And if we're unable to answer all of these questions, we will get back to you and respond to your questions. So L. Hill had another question. How does the large amount of development affect dam effectiveness? Now, Alex, I might just let you answer this one, explaining how more runoff comes from developed areas, et cetera.
Yeah, so with the large amount of development in the watershed that this dam gets stormwater from, so we had to update our models. Previous hydraulic studies did not have some of the developments that we have now. So we had to update some models with more impervious areas to reflect roads, asphalts, driveways, and whatnot to show the correct amount of stormwater coming in. And we did see an increase in the amount of flows from previous studies compared to the model results that we have now. So we are seeing a change there in terms of how it affects the effectiveness of the dam. So far, we've seen the dam be able to, the east wash be able to perform fairly well, the west wash to perform better than the east wash. However, all of these like factors, which storm are we able to retain, that will all predict whether we need to raise the dam a certain level, whether we need to change spillway configurations and all that. So the development is playing a part in how we select these alternatives.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. So the next question from Sue Moore Fry. Do any of the options impact the nearby homes? For example, flood insurance or increasing the possibility of homes flooding? I don't know if anybody wants to take a stab at that, since we haven't, I think perhaps the removal of the dams, if that alone were selected, there may be an impact from that alternative. Now that alternative is required to be evaluated. Does it make sense? Probably not, and we may not pursue it. But it is something that we've got to evaluate, because NRCS, they just want to make sure that there's no dam structures out there that are not needed or not necessary. So we're going through that process, and we'll do the detailed alternative analysis. But I think that would be the only alternative that would have an impact for homes flooding or requiring flood insurance. Now, does the team want to add on to what I just said?
Yeah, Keith, I'll just say that whenever we do an alternatives analysis like this, when we look at is there a possibility of your home being flooded? We take that very, very seriously. And that category in our scoring carries a lot of weight, because NRCS doesn't want to flood homes, City of Reno doesn't want to flood homes, and I know I definitely don't want to flood homes. So we're doing our best to make sure that things like flood insurance, things like increased possibility of home flooding are decreased or not even an issue in the dam projects, the project that we'll select moving forward.
Thank you, Alex. So the next question from Christina Slosher. I have lived 40 years on the eastern edge of the canyon, and there have been 3 fires over that time. Will fire suppression be a consideration? Well, this project is for, if I'm understanding the question correctly, but the purpose of this project is to improve the dams, which is related to stormwater runoff. So they're 2 separate issues, and it's not tied to fire suppression. So it's likely fire suppression is not going to be considered, unless I'm misunderstanding the question. Next question from Megan Baxon. What are you looking at for your baseline data? Have you identified other past, present, or future projects to include in the cumulative impacts analysis? So, baseline data, I guess, Alex, maybe you could touch on, your hydrology analysis. If we're considering future developments, or if it's existing conditions. I know that's probably one aspect of the question, and then there may be others as far as the detailed alternatives analysis that would apply.
Yeah, so we have been looking at future development that's gonna occur near the East Wash Dam, and we are also looking at, one of the things we did with this project was we did a complete site survey of the dams as they exist now. So we're trying to get the best available dimensions data, coverage data that we can for the area. And then in terms of past data, these were built, 60 years ago. So someone didn't keep the best records all the time over that 60 years. So we have original design drawings. We have some as-built drawings. We have a couple of design documents from the original build. And then as far as modifications to the dam, there's very little documentation between the original build and now. But what we do have has been considered and is a part of our hydraulics and hydrology analysis, and as such will be taken into consideration during our alternative selection portion.
Okay.
This is Carrie Lanza from the city of Reno. I think I might just add that I seem to recall that if this question were kind of towards the hydrology and whether we're looking at, all the runoff impacts from future development, I seem to remember that the hydrology study, was that by HDR, Steve, actually did include, build out conditions and.
Perfect. Okay. I don't know if there's anything else other than hydrology.
Hey, Keith, maybe there's another aspect to baseline data, and that's with the cultural and biological environmental impacts. And so, this project was done before NEPA existed, but that, we are required to look back at what it is and document all cumulative effects. Now, the neighborhood's fairly built out, so the cumulative effects is the development which was enabled by putting in these dams. So all that will be talked and discussed and counted as environmental impacts in the environmental study, and then eventually a record of decision there. So we haven't done the study yet, so I don't know if it's going to trigger this or that. We don't know these things yet, but I can easily say, pre-project, pre-development of the community would be addressed in the environmental project.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. All right. So a comment from Mike Pilcher, and this ties to the fire suppression question. So there is an access gate for type 3 brush fire engines near the new pump house off Wyoming Avenue. So with that said, our goal would be to maintain that access with this development. And I'm sure Steve and Carrie could verify that, or confirm that, but that would be our goal, is to keep that access open for fire suppression.
Hey, Keith.
Yes, sir.
We got a couple questions in the question and answer chat, which is different from the other chat because I don't know. We had two questions from Suzanne Finn. The first was, these are 5 alternatives. These 5 alternatives seem quite varied. Are there alternatives that are more probable than others? Yes, right now, this is very, very early days. So we are required to look at a lot of different things and start eliminating. And so we take the comments that you guys have now, we take that into consideration. But internally, we have these discussions about, which ones are probable, which ones aren't probable. And as we get closer to the draft environmental report and things like that, you guys will be able to see which ones we have selected to move past this preliminary stage and into a more detailed analysis. And then Suzanne also asked, if the dams are gone, what is the effect on the subdivision downstream? I live 1 street down from the ditch that flows from the area. So if the dams are gone, there are big impacts to the downstream communities. Part of the hydrology analysis is we've modeled what that looks like. And when the HHNS report, the hydraulics report comes out, you'll be able to see what those impacts are. And if those impacts drastically increase flooding chances, then they'll get scored very negatively in those categories when we start doing the alternatives analysis and all that.
And Alex, I think that was a great answer. That we'll find out what's first. Your first answer with, we'll find out what's practical, and then there'll be sub alternatives built around. Let's, for example, if fixing both dams was the most probable thing, then we'll have alternatives about how to fix the dams. So we will. It's a process of narrowing in, and then secondly, on the issue of potential downstream flooding, if you look at it from NRCS perspective, they have dams all over the nation, and they very often find dams that they could remove, and there is no downstream impact. So why would they pay to fix them? This is likely not one of those, but it is an important step to go through to help the NRCS feel like they've checked every option.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so moving on, there is a question from Gene Johnson. I realize it's early days, but what are the possible impacts for dust and air quality during construction, and also noise impact and traffic impacts? So there are requirements that would be put on the contractor to control dust and air quality during construction. They'd be required to obtain a permit from Washoe County with a dust control plan, which would include, a number of things. Generally, from your day-to-day activities, it would be watering. For longer periods, if there's a delay in construction, they'd be required to stabilize any bare soils with hydromulch or some other treatment that would suppress dust. So that would be part of the construction process. And then as far as noise impacts and traffic impacts, the city of Reno does limit the working days for a project such as this, generally Monday through Fridays from 7 to 5. They require that the contractor obtain traffic control or provide traffic control plans to the city to get a permit to work or access the right of way or any public streets. So the city does, require that the contractor creates a plan to minimize traffic impacts as well as noise. So I hope does anybody want to add on to that?
Yeah, there's going to be impacts. We'll do our best to mitigate them.
I'll just add that all of those impacts will be addressed for each alternative in the environmental document as well.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, next question from Eric Berg. This area is utilized frequently by the surrounding community. Will the public continue to be able to use this area before, during, and after the project? Well, I think during the project, there's going to be limitations. We'll want to separate the community from the construction zone. But before and after the project, and the city can verify this, but I don't believe there's any intent to prohibit access from the community.
We have the existing accesses where they're narrow, where people could get in and walk, and we'll probably leave it the same way. That was recently done a little bit before my time though, but it will still be the same. But like you said, during construction, we'll probably have limited access. Thank you.
Okay. And then we've got and I can't see, all I see is MI. So a question from MI says, thank you for the info. My mother still lives in the home I grew up at in the early 1970s, 2760 Severn, the original owner. I have seen water halfway up the West Wash Dam. My question is, how will the drain piping at the West Wash Dam low point be enhanced to carry more volume? Alex, you might want to weigh in on this, but I think, the intent of the dam is that it will store water as to not flood downstream properties. So as far as carry more volume of water to downstream properties, I don't think that's the goal of the project. It goes against what we're trying to do, which is protect the downstream properties by impounding the water in the dam area. Do you want to elaborate, Alex, or was that a decent enough explanation?
Yeah, that was great, Keith. You know, the dam is meant to impound right now. Increasing flows into the ditch directly below the West Wash Dam carries its own set of problems, being as the ditch is also bordered by homes, and at the downstream end of that ditch is just a single drain that is smaller than the one in the West Wash. And you know, we could have water impoundment issues there if we put too much water in. So what we're dealing with is more on the on the end of how can we fix the dam to store more water while also conveying what we need to out of it and protecting both upstream and downstream of the dam effectively.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. And I think we've got one more question in the Q&A that I don't believe we answered, and it's from Suzanne Finn. If the dams are gone, what is the effect on the subdivision downstream? I live one street down from the ditch that flows from the area.
Yeah,
So,
Keith, we kind of touched on this one earlier. And like Greg said, you know, the NRCS has a lot of dams across the nation, and some of them they're able to remove and not have problems downstream. And this is probably not going to be one of them, being as we have homes so close to the downstream areas. So there are effects. We've seen them in our preliminary modeling results, and like we said, that gets taken into heavy consideration during alternatives analysis, because we don't want to put someone in a flood zone that already isn't in one.
great, thank you, Alex.
Yeah, I'll just add, you know, the emphasis here is to look at the alternatives and score them. That removal of the dam, you know, would cause problems downstream and cause us to then have to fix all that. And so it's just going to score really negatively. You know, other, you know, options, you know, increase this pipe, decrease that pipe, everything gets a score, but anything that is going to hurt something downstream, it's going to lose in the scoring system. But yeah, if there were a removal, it's going to have impacts, and that's why it scores so badly and why we're not likely to pursue that. You can tell we're all mincing our words here because this is day one of the project. The point is get your input and then make a decision. We have not made our decision yet.
Thank you, Greg. So we'll just wait and see if there's other comments or questions that come in. As of now, we've gotten through.
Keith, do you want to cover that question that Steve was emailed earlier today about public access and enhancements for public use inside the dam?
Yeah, so we got a question, or Steve received a question today about enhancements to the area or within the dam impoundment area, such as adding vegetation or trees, or adding garbage cans, and kind of doing park improvements. So we do want to be clear that the funding for this project is strictly related to improvements to the dam structures for flood protection. So any improvements such as park improvements, things of that nature, are not included with the funding that's already been approved with this project. If you want to elaborate, Greg, on that, go for it. But
no, I think that does cover it. That we're flood protection, and that's not in the scope. Although that's a great idea. Secondly, there was other questions emailed in days earlier. A lot of them were, where can we get more information and things like that. I'm looking for more information on the website. Can you put more on the website? A lot of questions were about this meeting. When is it? So we'll consider those answered. But can you tell them a little bit more about the info we plan to post after this meeting?
Sure. So for one, we're going to post this PowerPoint presentation. That'll be available. And then we're also going to post a little more information on the details specific to the funding for the project. and the limitations of that funding. I'm sure I've missed something, Greg, but that I think is pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
We did have a couple of comments come through. So from L Hill, she notes there's a small parcel of city land that is zoned open space. We would like to see the city kick in some money to enhance that area. Now, I'm not familiar with that parcel, Steve or Carrie, but you know, that's a comment that we've received that you're aware of. So
I'm not aware of the small parcel, but if they let us know exactly which one, we'll address it.
okay.
Thanks.
And then Megan Baxton asked, sounds like dam removal is not being seriously considered. It's being seriously considered in the fact that we've got to analyze the impacts with that alternative. But as Greg was talking previously, it's likely that that's going to score very low and have several impacts, you know, so moving forward with that alternative, you know, my gut tells me it's not where the city or NRCS is going to go, but we do have to take a close look at it and clearly identify all the impacts from that removal. Okay, so L Hill says that parcel is near Keystone and Van Ness. So Steve, I'll let you, you know, take a look at that.
That parcel looks like that's the East Wash diversion.
Okay,
So if it's on the corner right there on where they're saying it's the East Wash diversion dam, and that's also the dam right above the West Wash dam.
Okay.
Thanks.
okay, and then a question from Corey Frey. Can you tell us about the new development of the bike shop up on McCarran, which is right next to the East Wash, so the top of the East Wash? How will that affect the project and bike traffic on the West Dam?
I think that the best answer is, I don't know. We're not part of community development, so we probably just don't have those answers today. As each of these questions are going to get a written response as is the procedure, and that'll give us a little more time to look at that in a little more detail. But I would say we just don't know.
Okay, and then a question from Heather Emmons. Can you let the people know where items from this meeting will be posted so they can find it? I don't know if we want to post a link or something on this.
I'll post a link in the chat.
Could you do that? That would
Yeah.
be great.
And then I think the website is on all public notice materials. And Steve, there's a short handle for it. I don't know if you have, I don't have it memorized right now, but
It's not short, but it's a little simple. It's www.reno.gov/West Wash Dam Rehabilitation Project altogether. But we'll put that link up too. Thank you.
And also today I was just, you know, checking, and I did a Google search for West Wash Dam, and the city's link will come up as one of the links. So that's another easy way to find it, is just Google West Wash Dam, and you'll find the city's web link in that search.
Yeah, and I think a key thing to remember there, you know, we're starting out early and we'll be populating that with time, though, you know, there's not an encyclopedia of information there tonight, but it'll be populated over time.
Okay. Nothing else coming in yet. We'll give it a minute.
Yeah, maybe it's important to point out, we blocked out 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock for this. However, if we sit here and there's no questions for a time, we'll go ahead and end the meeting. But that people are invited to continue to email comments through the public comment period to Steve, who collects those. They get added to the record, they get responded to and published.
So Carrie, you're getting called out. Steve introduced you, but you hadn't joined the meeting. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, and thanks. I had some technical difficulties getting on the panel link here, but I'm Carrie Lonza. I'm the engineering manager. We're now the Utility Services Department, formerly Public Works.
Great. Sorry. Thank you, Carrie. And then Sean Gooch had asked if we can post the recording of this meeting on the website. So we'll talk that over with the project team and see what we can do.
Is the PowerPoint up there already? I think we talked about putting that up.
Not yet. That'll be posted probably tomorrow. Certainly this week we'll get it up and make it available to the public. We've already sent it to the IT department with the city, so they should be able to get that on there.
Maybe just we'll start thinking about a conclusion here and we'll let everybody have their chance to say, but I just want to share that, we have members of our own team here on the screen and there's a bunch of individuals from NRCS that aren't here tonight, but they check different aspects of the project, but we take it pretty seriously. We love our community, but members of the team here live in this neighborhood. So, we're excited about the project. We're excited to do a good job on the project. We'll be starting environmental studies, and we take those very seriously. And we'll be having some good background information, research, and published. So, and as you know, you saw the time frame is long. That will be very slow and deliberate, and keep everyone informed. So that's our commitment. And I don't know. I think that needs to be shared, that we try to be professional and careful, but that we do have people that work right here that use the bike trails. I mean, we're pretty invested in this.
It's a good closing. City of Reno, NRCS, any final comments?
While I was out there doing the postings, I know some of the citizens out there, and even other times when I'm out there, they always ask about this. And what happened was previously there was a lot of retirements and turnover with the city of Reno and NRCS. And this rehabilitation was a complete start over where we're starting off from scratch. So we have a new grant and a new agreement with them, and just want everyone to know, because a lot of these citizens were part of the previous meeting, which was, I'm not even sure if it was 5-6 years ago, but it's a complete start over. Nothing happened about it except that we're starting completely over. Thanks.
So we did get another question from L. Since the time frame is long, is there any concern about risk in the interim?
Maybe I could take that one. So the dams, we have 9 high hazard dams in the city of Reno, and they are inspected annually by the state. Often we as staff, Steve and myself, can't have attended those, and then we get a report. And no, I would say that we really don't have any very serious concerns until this project is done. And then, of course, in major storm events, we're out there with the public works crew monitoring dams and bridges, and I'm just making sure that we're responding and seeing how things are going. There's also an emergency action plan, which we hope to never employ, but if we have to get people out of there, there's plans to do so.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, Carrie, for taking that question. And then from the NRCS, I just want to thank everybody for their time. I thank all the public for their comments. I myself live in the Reno area, so it's not just like the federal government is coming in from the outside and we don't know what's going on the landscape. We are assisting with the project, and we're excited to be able to answer the public's comments and concerns.
Thanks, Michael. So with that, I think we're all wrapped up. Questions and comments have slowed down. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening, and have a great rest of your week. And we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Okay. Take care.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks to the public for the participation. And keep those questions coming to me and we'll get those addressed. Thank you, everyone.